Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. I'm your host, James Ferrigno. Join me while we explore the truths most people never hear. Welcome to What Nobody Tells You. My name is James Ferrigno, and I'm your host. And our guest today is Josh Kornbluth, monologist. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show. Why don't you just dive into it here? When did you first realize that storytelling was in your blood?
Well, in my blood, certainly in my blood from my father. He wasn't a professional storyteller. He was a public school teacher and sometimes social worker, but he always would come home with stories, usually about how he had failed spectacularly at one or more things. And so he was usually the brunt of the humor of the story. And he would tell these stories and he'd just laugh as he was telling it. They were really funny. And then he would sometimes sort of stutter because he was like, if he was eating, he would do this thing where like he'd be eating and then he'd like say, and then he'd take a bite and then he'd have to chew it. So then you'd wait for him to say the next thing, you know. And he was usually naked. So that was my dad. and he was great. I mean, I just knew him to be a great dad and who was a great storyteller. And my grandpa, my mother's father, taught himself how to write after growing up in the shtetl in the old country as an illiterate pickpocket. And so he also told great stories. And so I have it on both sides. And then as for me, I never really thought of myself as certainly, I never thought of myself as a storyteller for a living, much less for almost 40 years now. And
wow,
what made me think of it for the first time was that my friend brought me to see Spalding Gray. And yes, oh sorry, I'm just dealing with something on my wife's screen here. Okay, cool. Yeah, I have a friend. I used to work at the Boston Phoenix in alternative weekly newspaper. It is no more, but they had a lot of great people at it. And a friend of mine, Scott Rosenberg, was the second or third string theater critic, and he didn't have a date to bring to see Spalding Gray, who I'd never heard of. And he brought me to see him at the Brattle Theater in Cambridge, Mass. And I was just blown away by the beauty of his story and by the beauty and the long attention span of his audience. It was really just quite beautiful to me. And I saw him first do his show, an early monologue of his, Sex and Death to the Age 14. And then he actually was doing a bunch of his shows in repertory at the Brattle Theater then. So I went back and I thought, I want to do this. I mean, I'm enchanted with this and I would like to do this. Also, my father had died and in looking back on it, really wanted to resuscitate his memory, keep his memory alive. And I was in my mid-20s. And so I thought, well, I want to do it, but I didn't think I could because, you know, I figured I read up on Spalding Gray and he had been like an actor in straight theater and then he was in an alternative theater and that's how he developed the character with Liz Lecomte of Spalding, the Spalding who tells the stories. And so so I thought, well, I was a copy editor. That was my,
yeah.
And I wasn't even a very like storytelling copy editor, you know, like maybe some copy editors go, well, once I was sitting, you know, with Hemingway and he crossed out that, you know, but I wasn't one of those either. So I was just one of your quieter copy editors. But I thought, I want to do this. It grabbed me. I want to do it. I want to try. And so I booked a space. This is in the 80s, and mid 80s. I booked there's this restaurant called TT the Bear's Place that had a acoustic music night on Wednesdays, and the band that was playing the next acoustic night were friends of mine. They're called Scruffy the Cat. Really good band, by the way. Land of a Thousand Girls is a great single, and so I worked out a trade with them. I would let the guitarist use my Martin steel string guitar that my father and stepmother gave me if they would allow me to go up in between their two sets at acoustic night and talk about what my father told me about communism and about sex, which
Mm.
was essentially the same things. he he liked them both a great deal,
Mm-hmm.
communism and sex, and then I just went up and tried it for the first time, and for 20 minutes told stories about my dad and me, and it was a lot of it was awkward, but I loved it. I loved
Mm-hmm.
it, and I thought, well, I'm not really great at this yet, but I'd like to keep trying, and then that became something I was determined to do, and I eventually did.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I'm a big fan, by the way.
Thank you.
And
It
yeah,
speaks
I
well
love
of
your
your
work.
your taste,
Mm.
your aesthetic, highly refined aesthetic sense.
It does. It does. Yeah, fan of Spalding Gray as well.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, he was awesome.
yeah, amazing. Yeah, I find myself quoting Monster in a Box on a daily basis.
Yeah, yeah. Swimming to Cambodia,
Mm-hmm.
they're just Grey's Anatomy. So many great pieces. He
Yeah.
was literally, as I told you, he was literally my inspiration, and I eventually got to
Mm.
know him. So,
Oh, you did.
yeah, I saw him at Lincoln Center.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, After I had seen him earlier, I saw him like a few years
Mm-hmm.
later, and I waited outside the stage door, like stage door Johnny. Is that a term, stage door Johnny? I don't know, stage door Joshy, whatever.
Yeah.
And I said, I just want to tell you, I think you're great. You really inspired me. I want to try to do what you do. And he said something droll, and then he said, "Well, I have to go to the corner, mail this letter. Want to walk with me?" I said, "Sure." So I walked up to the mailbox and walked back, and then years after that, I had a booking agent who was Spalding Gray's wife at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
his last wife, partner wife, Kathy
Oh, okay.
Russo. And so then I got to know him more, and Kathy made him come to my openings and stuff. So, but yeah, he's a real. It's just it's such a cool and weird thing to have one single person. I mean, I have a lot of tons of people like we all do who influenced me and who I admire and that I'm in awe of. But there's
Yeah.
one person who showed me this particular form, and it was Spalding Gray.
Yeah. That's something I would always wondered about. Well, at least for the last 20 years or so. What's your process? Do you have a process for creating a
Yeah.
monologue?
Well, I eventually moved to San Francisco, and a space opened up in North Beach that I could perform in.
Mm-hmm.
That as long as I could sell tickets and take the ticket money, and then it was a restaurant upstairs. It was in the basement, the performing space, and then they would serve food and drinks and get the money from that. And so that was the arrangement. And so I just said I'm going to do a show, and I called it Josh Kornbluth's Daily World. The Daily World used to be the name of the Communist Party newspaper
Yeah.
when I was a kid. Before I was a kid, it was called the Daily Worker, which I think is a lot cooler. But um, and and then I just decided I had been doing some open mics because I didn't know how to get into doing what Spalding Gray did, and I had no theater background. So I've been doing some
Mm-hmm.
open mics around San Francisco and before that
Mm-hmm.
in Boston. But I really wanted to try this monologue stuff, and so I just booked the room and put up some flyers and invited people I knew,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I tried writing, because you asked me about process, and I can't believe I'm actually answering your question because that's rare for me. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's rare to have gotten to it within an hour. Um, so in the process, I thought it was like I would try to write it because I thought you write a script and then you memorize the script and then you do it. But I just couldn't. Every time I wrote, it just came out like trying to be clever. Like it wasn't working for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just instead I made this big. I wrote on this big piece of butcher paper and I put in like all the stories I could think of about my parents, and then try to connect them with lines and stuff to see what could go to what. But they all connected to all the other ones. All of them did.
Mm-hmm.
But I put it up on the side of the stage, and then I just went up and improvised and completely from scratch. And there was a band. A friend of mine Bob Brumbelow had a jazz trio, and so I asked him to open for me, and then I didn't know how long I'd improvise, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour. So I just said, can you open for me and then close for me when I'm done with my improv? So they did that. But then my improvs got longer and longer until they were like running 2 hours. And they'd go off to a bar, the band would, during my set, and the drummer especially would just get inebriated. And then one time, just the drummer didn't come back. He just went to the bar during my thing, and it was just too long. It was like, so I just, I no longer had the band to open and close for me. I just did the whole show myself. And so what I do is and I still do that. I improvise from scratch. Like right now, working on this show called What Is to Be Done, Fighting Fascism and Depression. And I just went up with this one idea, and that's what I usually do. Like, I want to do a show about how much I love math, and then I flunked calculus, or I want to do a show about how I was such a bad legal secretary. In the case of show about depression and fascism, I just had this idea. I was sort of developing in my Substack a little bit, and people were responding well to it. This idea that what my brain, when I was depressed, what my brain was saying to me was similar to what the MAGA fascists were saying to us.
Yes.
You're helpless, you're hopeless, you're not real American, real citizen, you don't deserve things. There's no way, and that was the only thing I started with. And then I just went up and started improvising. In this case, I started doing that last year at this really cool place called The Marsh. That's in San Francisco and Berkeley, and where you can develop your monologues. And then I just did it. So I improvise, and then I just keep improvising, and I tend to record the improvs, but I record them so that eventually, if a director is going to work with me, I can say, oh, listen to this one. But I hate listening to myself, so I actually don't listen to them and then build on it that way. I just simply go back out and I do another improv, and I remember what I remember, and I trust the process that it'll come out, and I get very intimate with audiences. Like, I say things and think things and say things without thinking to audiences that I don't think to myself. Like, I'm more intimate in some ways with audiences than I am with me. And certainly and it's a really beautiful relationship, I mean, to me. And so what I keep improvising. Sometimes people come to a whole bunch of improvs and they say, oh yeah, you left out this thing I really liked. And then I put it back in, and then eventually I start working with a director. Usually my very first show I didn't, but after that I work with a director, and the director is sort of a director / dramaturg for me. Dramaturg or dramaturge? Drama guy, structure guy. I don't know.
Dramaturge, I've heard.
Oh, okay. Let's say dramaturge then. But anyhow, because there's a lot of help with structure I can need, because my stories just go all over the place and everything connects to everything else. And I've worked with some brilliant people who've helped me to shape the story. Plus, they do the directing stuff of like blocking and stuff like that. But essentially, we keep track of the show at that point in the process through an outline. And I used to make the director keep the outline. Like, I didn't even want to type the outline, but now I'll sometimes type the outline myself.
Yeah.
And then the outline gets more and more elaborate, more and more detailed, until eventually by opening night, the show is pretty much word for word. And then it certainly is by the end of the first run. So that's my process. Is I improvise all my shows, but eventually I settle on word for word. Eventually there is something that you could call a script, or you could make a script from, or a transcript from. It's just that I don't, I don't write the script. The transcript comes after the show opens.
Makes sense. Yeah, I know I've seen you a couple times where you were workshopping something. I remember pardon me, I can't remember the title of it.
There were a lot of things that have like Josh in them. Like there's Citizen Josh, and
it was
Citizen Brain, and The Mathematics of Change, Red Diaper Baby, Haiku Tunnel, Ben Franklin Unplugged.
I know this. Okay, I know those ones.
Yeah.
It's about you're in a hostel.
Oh yeah, that one actually I haven't finished staging yet. That's called the Bottomless Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories, and it hasn't been completely finished yet because my
Oh,
collaborators
okay.
and we um various things happened, including COVID, to separate us. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
was a visiting artist and then volunteer at the Zen Hospice Project in San Francisco, and
Mm-hmm.
I loved it and made this piece about it that's not never been quite finished.
Oh, okay. That was fantastic to see. I may have seen you do it twice. Yeah, this is all very interesting, very helpful. For me, because I have a couple monologues myself that I've been going around open mics, and but I haven't yet. I've done it in a house a couple of times, but I haven't
Houses are
found,
great. I mean, I
you
find
know,
like I don't know if you have this experience, but I find like maybe 5 or 6 people, and that's an audience. Like
yeah.
I don't really don't need. I mean, I can improvise to 1,000 people, but it's like, and maybe there's a little more information there, but it's plenty to have 5 or 10, or like Jewish minyan or something, 10 or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Um, I find, and when I was developing a couple of shows at the Sundance Theater Lab with my then collaborator David Dower, the
Mm-hmm.
way they would set things up, it was on a mountain in Utah, and they gave me a yurt. They gave us a yurt, and then
Yeah.
what I did was I just invited everyone else at the Sundance Theater Lab, the actors, the wait staff, I said, if you can come by, I'll be doing like 2 improvs every day in this yurt, and if you can come by, I'll do an improv. I just need audience members, and so they just sort of came through and cycled through, and it would be like 5 people, 6 people,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even as few as 3 people. One person's weird because it's like if it's one person, you're going like, you're not talking to me, you're performing to me, which is something that Spalding Gray would actually do when I would sit with him. He would actually just sort of he wouldn't actually converse with me. He would just sort of monologue to me. But I was
Yeah,
thrilled.
that
So
sounds right.
I was thrilled, but
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of weird.
It is. I did do one once to one person just because I didn't have any more people at the time, and it
My
was
wife
odd.
was in the audience. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it was just it was a strange. It didn't really work for me.
Mhm.
I also found I can't do it to a camera.
Oh yeah, no, camera's not a person.
Doesn't work.
I was going to say, just my wife went to this show before I knew her, but she
Mm-hmm.
went to a one-person show by David Kale,
Mm-hmm.
who's awesome, and she was the only one in the audience. And my wife is very, very, very shy, and so she was aghast, and thought, well, they're not going to do it, and they did it, and he did it just to her from the stage, and it's maybe her favorite thing she ever saw in the theater.
Wow, fantastic.
Deep in a Dream of You, I think was the name of it.
Mm.
So it can be done. That's the
Yeah.
rule, the theater rule, that you should have, for the show to go on, you should have at least as many people in the audience as you have on stage. So
Yeah.
for a solo show, the bar's pretty low. It's not absolutely low. 0 isn't enough, but 1 is.
Yeah. Yeah. You can. You can. I did do it.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I think it all
So
adds up. Like all those experiences add up,
yeah.
even if like they become awkward or weird. They add up. But now I'm also but now I'm thinking of there's this writer Peter DeVries who wrote comic novels and was an
Uh-huh.
editor at the New Yorker years ago. But he had some characters saying, in the narrator in one of his novels, I think it was him, he was saying, people say that you learn from your mistakes and your failures, but I don't. I actually only learn from my successes and like being happy. so I was like sort of like questioning what I was just saying to you, to say like, well, everything all adds up, but you need to have some good things at some point. Some good things have to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I do.
I would say that's true for me as well. Yeah. You have to something has to happen at some point. I look at the failure as just building the foundation. It's just part of the process. And even calling it failure is, I've kind of moved away from that. It's just,
Well, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and no, it's a good. I take your point. I mean, some of my best lines and best jokes are failures, and they're actually like a joke, something that I failed to say properly.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted to say something serious, but I said it wrong in this way that made people laugh, and then I could just replicate that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and in a sense, like all the shows are kind of failures in that with none of the shows do I begin with an idea and the show ends up being that thing. So, but it isn't, you're right. I mean, it isn't a failure. That's just the process of, seeing what will the story become?
Mm-hmm.
What will the universe tell me? The universe meaning audiences really, and me. And, I don't know. I find it really fascinating. When the show is finally done and it's word for word, I'm quite relieved because it's kind of a bit of a tight wire act because you want to entertain the audience, every time. But if I'm improvising, there's that balance because if I just wanted to just say things that I knew would work or had generally worked, then I'd never try new stuff and I wouldn't experiment and I wouldn't go in
Mm-hmm.
different directions. And so I need to improvise because that's just how I work. But
Mm-hmm.
once the show's together, it is a great relief to know, like, to go to the theater, bike to the theater, and go, I know what I'm going to say.
I've got it all
Yeah,
right
and
here.
I know my moves and everything. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love touring and doing that over and over.
It's fantastic. One more thing on failure. As a teacher, I've worked as a sped teacher, and failure is how people learn. If you're teaching a kid the alphabet, they don't get it, they don't get it, they don't get it
Mm.
100 times, and then they get it. It's like
Yeah,
that is the process for
yeah,
learning.
and it's and I can imagine that for a bad teacher, unimaginative teacher, or just a bad teaching system, that kids failing at things, it gets them slotted as, well, you're not that smart, you're not that good, and pushes them sort of away rather than having the patience to know that this is just the process, or this is a child who learns this way and not that way.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was, as I mentioned, a school teacher, and he
Mm-hmm.
taught special ed a
Oh,
lot. And he, did you say special ed? Is that what you
yep.
said?
Special ed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He had his master's in special ed, and he had a student, and he would have all these students where in middle school they were illiterate, like all of them entering
Mm-hmm.
seventh grade, and but he talked about like this one kid was supposed to be like, he was in special ed, he was supposed to be not very bright, right? So the kid was having a hard time learning how to read and write.
Mm-hmm.
But the kid mentioned that he had a job, right? So he had a job at a paint shop. So where they sold paints. So
Mm-hmm.
my dad went to the shop and it was like all of these cans of paint, right? Like hundreds on the wall, but they actually didn't color code the label. They actually just printed the name of each shade of paint on the
Mm-hmm.
label. And so he was getting someone come in and say, I'd like, burnt amber. And he would get it. And he'd say, I want, orange slice or whatever. That's probably not a name
Yeah.
of a color or something. But, and he would get it. And so my father said, well, how do you do that? Because you can't read. And he said, I just memorized the shape of the letters. Like he just memorized the whole shape of all the
Mm.
letters, which is actually harder, you know? And so
Yeah.
my father said, look, if you can do that, man, reading isn't a problem. It's not going to be a problem for you.
Yeah. 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 I find a lot of the kids have other skills or are
Mm,
just doing something in a different way a lot of times.
yeah. My dad was funny though. People say like, what is special ed? And he said, usually special ed is, the kids who have kicked a teacher in the ass.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, they would they can confuse the teachers.
Yeah.
So when you go through your process and then the monologue becomes set and you start performing it, you ever had something happen then where you, or maybe at the moment that it gets solidified, where you have this revelation of, oh, wow, that's what this thing is, or
Yes,
it
and that's
actually
what I'm
means
looking
something
for.
different than I thought?
That
Mm-hmm.
and that is that thing, that aha moment
Mm-hmm.
is, and that is what I'm seeking to learn from the very, very beginning, is what really is this show about? And it, as I said, never is what I think it is. And then when it becomes
Mm-hmm.
evident, and I get it in feedback from audiences and also from my friends, like my friend Scott, who brought me to see Spalding Gray, he still sees a lot of my shows. We both live in Berkeley, and and from other people too. But I people will also say, "Oh, this is," they'll ask me about a certain thing in the show, and I'll realize that's what they're fixated on, and that's what the show's about. And then that is the breakthrough. That's the thing. Once that happens, I'm in a good place, right? Because then everything else is, embellishment, really.
Yeah.
Everything else is, once you have the spine, once you know what it's about. Oh, it's about that.
Mm-hmm.
When I did my show Haiku Tunnel, when I was a legal secretary, about being a really bad legal secretary,
Yeah.
I was doing these 20-minute excerpts at the Marsh, and I'd just come in and talk about like the stuff I had fucked up, at work, which was, now that I'm thinking of it, very much in my father's tradition of self-storytelling. And so, but I was saying, okay, so I mailed these letters, I was supposed to mail these letters for my boss. And I think my boss might be Satan. He really scares me. And he gave me 85 or so very important letters to mail, and I haven't mailed them, right? So then afterwards, I'd come down from the stage, and people go, when are you going to mail them? And then they'd come back the next week and go, did you mail them? Stuff like that. And I thought, oh, they care, they care. I don't know that every piece has that necessarily. Like, I don't know, my show Red Diaper Baby, which is kind of my fundamental show about my parents and communism and sex,
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know that I know what it's about. I mean, it's nominally about being told by my parents, especially my father, that I was going to lead the communist revolution in America, and then
Mm-hmm.
failing to do that. So I understand that. But really, to me, it's just telling stories from my childhood in a certain order. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I always know, oh, it's about this thing. But
Yeah.
generally I do. Generally I do. Or at least, like, I don't have to be right. It just has to be something that I actually feel, right? Because, I mean, I can think this is what the show's about. Do the show. If you like my show and you think it's about something totally different, that's fine. If you thought it was good, like, what drove me through it, what made my soul attached to it and gnaw at it and work at it and worry it until I had the story that I felt needed to be told. Whatever that drove me to do that's what was important. But then you could see it and you could go, no, actually it's about sunglasses. I mean, you could, and that'd be, be fine. Maybe. I don't know. I'm noticing, like, I make pronouncements, like, so far I've tried to make pronouncements like a few times in our conversation, and
Mm-hmm.
each time I make a pronouncement, I go, ooh, no, that's actually wrong. It's like, no, but that's not true, what you're saying to the nice gentleman. So I apologize for that, but I believe them when I'm saying them, is the thing, James, I want to just get across to you. No.
Yeah, I get it. I've been going through that really last couple of years myself. There's so many things throughout my life that I was so certain of and would, say. And then last few years it's been, well, no, nothing's that certain.
But that also is, uncertainty is a great, great subject, and is, I think, underlies a lot of great subjects. Like, I think my show, The Mathematics of Change, which is about flunking calculus at freshman year at college.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's about coming to terms with the fact that the world isn't going to be exactly what I thought it was going to be when I was a kid. And I'm not going to be what I thought I was going to be as a kid. And that At some point, I'm going to hit the wall, as they say. And when I hit the wall, I'll either be destroyed by it or else I'll find a way through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't seen your work on that. Oh, I've heard of it, but I haven't experienced it. But
It's available online and as a DVD for
yeah.
the 11 people who have DVD drives still. It's
Oh
available on my
yeah.
website.
Oh, I
I love
have one in
doing the
my.
show. I still perform a lot of my old shows in
Mhm.
repertory when people bring them up. So, and I can do
Mm.
pretty much all of my shows word for word. Like you can roll me out of bed and I can do
Really?
all of my 10 or 11 shows. Yeah. I mean, ideally, I like to have one time through where I just sort of mumble it to myself to remind myself of it, but it's in my head. I see it. I see it as
Mm.
I'm telling it, and I see the things happening. I'm seeing the place I'm talking about. I'm seeing me there. I'm seeing the other people as the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it doesn't feel like I'm like delivering. Well, see, that's a pronouncement again. It's sort of
Mm.
a little bit feels like I'm delivering a text, but really what it feels like to me is I'm actually seeing a movie and I'm describing it to the audience.
Mm. Mm. That's great. That's great. I like
Yeah.
that. It's just making me think about mine. Yeah, I do. I do visualize it. Yeah, I do see it like that. Um, have you found that like the stories have helped? They must have like helped your self awareness, expand your awareness of yourself and the world.
Yes. I think in at least a couple of ways.
Mm.
One way is that the act of, well, learning that I could share my stories and share my innermost feelings and thoughts and confusions with strangers. What that told me was something that was very releasing to me, that I could maybe have a career doing that and doing it repeatedly. And that was cool. But also the act of telling a story, putting it in a shape, because the experiences rarely feel like they're part of a rational shape to me. I usually when I'm going through things, it seems out of control and I'm fucking up and just, I'm not in top of it at all. But when you tell a
Mm.
story, you develop it into a shape. It has a shape. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, or it should, in
Mm-hmm.
my case at least. And when you do that, I think you can maybe get some sense of control, or
Mm.
not you, but I can feel some sense of control over aspects of my life that seemed out of control or were out of control when I actually went through them. I talk about that in my latest piece. At least I have in the improv so far, sometimes talked about that I actually had my first major depression as an adult when I was told it began when I was told that my first run of my first autobiographical monologue was going to end. And I sort
Mm.
of suspected that there was a comfort of living inside this story, inside this shape, especially about my late father and the sadness. And then to
Mm-hmm.
be able to joyfully talk about him and others, and then to give it a shape and to have it play out, that really was a great comfort to me. And I think, knowing that I would lose the ability to live inside that story many times a week, even though I wasn't consciously thinking about that, but I think it was devastating to me.
Yeah, that sounds well. It sounds very comforting to be able to be in that. So I'm gonna egotistically put the spotlight on myself for a second. My process is a little different, and what happened to me with the monologues, the way I started was I had watched you perform, seen some movies, Haiku Tunnel, of course, and seen Spalding Gray in various forums as well. But I'd never thought about being a monologuist. And then one day I was shopping at Whole Foods Market, and just the first line of something popped into my head, just from nowhere. And I thought, oh, this is a good first line of a story or something. I want to write this down. I have written, stories and
Hmm.
film scripts. But then the second line came, then the third, then the fourth, and I went, then the fifth, and then I started to think, I'm not going to be able to remember all these lines to write them down, and
Sure.
then I just went, and they kept coming, and I just abandoned my basket at Whole Foods, ran out to my car, drove home as quick as I could,
Which,
sat
by
on
the
the
way, you
computer.
saved yourself probably $10,000 just by dropping that basket.
Oh
So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
it's gonna save
yeah.
Whole Foods.
And
Boy,
you ran
this was a
home.
few years ago, though.
Yeah,
These
yeah,
days it'd be 20,000.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and I just ran up, and it took me. There was a difficult half hour of trying to reconstruct all the lines that had come to me,
Mhm.
but then once I got caught up, the rest of them just came,
Well,
and
that's the dream. I mean,
it took a couple
that's like
hours.
that's what we all dream of, as writers, is that we're like basically taking dictation, like,
Yes,
you know,
and that's exactly what it was, and it comes out to, when I perform it, it's about an hour and 10 minutes, say 70
Mhm.
minutes long.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
nice length.
yeah. So,
Uh,
but I didn't write it
it
really.
got written.
It got written. It's about me. It's about my childhood, essentially. Um, yeah, and a lot of very personal things that are maybe hard to share. Um, yeah. So, I don't know what to. So when I perform it, I kind of have to read it, and it's like performing somebody else's work.
Sure.
So I have to learn
Yeah.
it to even to say
Yeah.
it. It's an interesting
Yeah.
thing.
It's interesting because I would find that when I read from a script, like even if I read from the transcript of what I wrote, I recognize it as mine, but it feels like I'm reading someone else's thing, right?
Mm.
And so I think just because my process involves like putting it together in front of audiences and then memorizing it in this organic way without a script,
Mm-hmm.
that it's just in me, that that's maybe why it stays in me so well, and
Yeah.
why I can do a show from 25 years ago, right now, so, um, because I don't have a particularly good memory in any other way. So,
Mm. That makes total sense. Yeah. Now that you say that, because workshopping it and going through it, and putting it together. Yeah, that's how you learn things. Yeah, if it just
yeah.
drops on you.
But I
I
mean,
think I
yeah.
read Bob Dylan said that all those songs he had written, his first several albums, he said, I don't remember any of that. I don't know who wrote those things. They're
Well, he was
unfamiliar to
also, I
me.
mean, he was high as
He
well. So,
was he
yeah.
was high. That's true.
Yeah. But I mean,
I was not
whatever it
high.
is, it certainly worked out.
Yeah, worked out for us anyway. So, what advice would you give to someone who's written a monologue or two and hasn't yet got it on a stage?
Oh, find a place. I mean, I think you've actually, the two sort of strategies
Mm-hmm.
are, one is to, if you are blessed to have a place like the Marsh in your town, or a theater, or
Yeah.
know someone who has a theater and it's dark on Mondays, or
Mm-hmm.
then go for it. Invite people and go for it. I mean, that you
Yeah.
have to do it. Like, I learned that doing stand up too. Like, stage time, you have to just get a lot of stage time, just even to become who you are on stage. You begin as sort of like this child of stage, even though I started when I was 30, but
Mm-hmm.
like I was an infant in terms of as a stage performer, and you just
Mm-hmm.
have to go through all of this process. But then also there are other ways to do it, and you've talked about it. You could have friends, invite a dozen friends or 5 friends.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, I've had a lot of fun performing and trying out stuff in bookshops, because you have, very literate people by definition
Mm-hmm.
there, and who are interested in stories. And so, but I think the thing to do, to me, is get it in front of an audience. Like, get it in front of an audience, and even if it's like 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and see what it feels like, and I feel like, from my experience, that, like, the universe will tell you,
Yeah.
eventually, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I do, it doesn't work out, like a lot of stuff, so the universe tells me that sucked, Josh, and it's, always sort of a tough message to get. But it's sort of like a double thing going on. One is, well, the specific thing that I was just trying to do didn't work out. But the idea that I want to spill my guts in these stage monologues, that generally does work out. Like, and so, and part of that is, it's all the drafts you throw away and all the stuff. And unfortunately, my long-suffering audiences have to be there through all my drafts, but yeah.
Or fortunately.
Yeah, or fortunately, depending on the night. But I think that's what I would say is you kind of have to do it. Like you have to do it. And then I would also like using myself as an example. I had writer's block when I tried to write. So I, out of desperation, figured out a way to generate my stories by improvising them, which I had no idea I could improvise, right? So I think the thing is, if you have that story to tell, if you have stories to tell, then, and the mode that you're using isn't, working for you, or you think it might be a problem, then try another mode. There was some playwright who she writes in, the software GarageBand. It's for like mixing sound and music.
Thing.
The Apple
Yeah.
GarageBand. But there's this one playwright who's really great, and I read or heard that she composes her plays in GarageBand. I don't know how she does that, I heard or read something about, or heard Paul Simon talk about like bouncing a ball against a wall and making up his songs, and that's worked out for him, and the thing about it is to actually do it, and then withstand the horrible feelings of failure.
Yeah, withstand them.
And treasure and keep sacred those moments of breakthrough.
Yeah, I've had experiences with the same piece. I've gone around to open mics, and I've noticed the audience, there's a lot of sexuality in mine. And so it really depends on the audience.
That can be, it's a hard subject. I've done some shows that deal with sexuality, and I know that it's been interesting because it makes me uncomfortable. I used to have these things. I was doing this show called The Moisture Seekers, and it was like about, for sexual experience. And I wanted to like talk about some stuff, but I was like getting sort of like embarrassed and stuff. And my audiences, they frequently were and are like some old people, right? There are a lot of old people go to the theater, but this audience was like really old. It was like 8 old Jewish people or something. And, and then I was like, well, okay, I want to tell you about the sexual experience I had, but I don't, it's too embarrassing. And then I remember this woman, like 90-something-year-old woman, oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
So,
she doesn't care.
But also it's a lesson too, which is that, as maybe Richard Pryor and certainly others have as Richard Pryor and others maybe have said, every audience is a genius. Audiences are geniuses. So they are capable of an infinite amount of understanding, of connection, of depth, right? And the limitations are mine and not theirs. And so, the multitudes contain multitudes, that's, that's the truth of it. And allows us to maybe access, or allows me to access, the multitudes within myself.
Nice. Yeah, I found that the audiences of older people that I performed for loved it. When I performed it in kind of this more hip place in the city, just dead air. It's funny. It's really funny, and just not a single laugh. So,
well, but also that's, as you probably have, but you also learn from those things, because unless you want to only perform in old age homes, you want to you're going to want to reach the younger hipper people, right? So
Yeah, true.
and so that could be a sign that, okay, maybe I have to keep working on what I'm doing so that I can reach a broader audience
Mm-hmm.
with material, especially with material that's on sensitive subjects.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what I like about mine is that it's authentic. And for you, what's something that nobody tells you about being authentic during a performance?
Something that nobody tells me about being authentic.
Yeah, I guess that's
What
worded
what's
kind of
something that
strangely.
nobody tells me about being authentic is that authenticity can be faked. And
Mm.
and in fact, in some sense is faked. There's artifice. I mean, if I have a tender moment in my show
Mm-hmm.
about sex or some other tender subject or death or love or whatever, and I'm exposing myself with great vulnerability. But let's say I've done that show 300 times. So I'm expressing it and I'm expressing it in an authentic way. It is authentic, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm reproducing it. I'm reproducing that authentic experience. And then I'm having an authentic experience of telling the story, but I'm not having the authentic experience that I'm describing. And I think, and that's what's important. I believe, one of my favorite short story writers, Grace Paley, I believe,
Mm.
told one of her fiction students at Columbia, the student said, well, why didn't you like my story? Grace Paley, I mean, everything in it is absolutely true. And she said, well, what's true, what's authentic is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. What matters is what it evokes in people. That's
Mm-hmm.
being authentic. Just you can read the phone book and it'll be authentic. But I date myself here, like how long has it been since we've had phone books? But in any case, you know what I
Oh wow.
mean. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
you can
Yeah.
you can you can you know that, but what drove it is authentic. But I think maybe that's something that people don't they didn't tell me, and that I had to sort of learn on my own.
Mm. Yeah, authenticity is a much misunderstood concept, I think.
Authenticity is something that you have to learn to fake.
Yeah. Oh, I think most people can. I think that's the norm.
Yeah. It's a particular subset of those people who have the weird genetic predisposition to talking about themselves on stage. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think people do generally do that.
Yeah, if you tell someone to be authentic, they'll just act like they always act,
Yeah. But
which is
it's just so slippery because what is authentic? Like, who is
mm-hmm.
authentically me? I mean, I'm in
Mm-hmm.
therapy to try to figure that out. I'm 67 and,
Mm-hmm.
and I still don't really know. In some ways, I can't untangle in some important ways who I am, what I am, and who I am, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
being my father's son or my wife's husband or my son's father. I don't know who I am except in those contexts,
Mm-hmm.
and so I don't know. I don't know. The thing it's just, but you know it when you feel it, and
Mm-hmm.
you know it when you say it and you feel it, and then you know it, and then when audiences, not everything that you feel strongly about will be felt strongly by the audience, depending on
Mm-hmm.
how you present
Yeah.
it. But when that coincides, the audience feeling it strongly, you felt it strongly.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the shit.
That's when you hit something, I think, and because you're getting authenticity, I don't think is necessarily an absolute position. It's just
Mm.
something you get closer to,
Yeah,
and
was it asymptotical, or I don't even know, but I just remember the asymptote, like you get closer and closer to it, but you never
yeah,
quite reach it,
yeah, like that.
and that it's like that. It's like that.
Yeah.
Like democracy, except we're going the opposite way right now from asymptotical. We're going the ass way of away from democracy right now. But generally
Yeah.
speaking, we try to aspire to better and better
Mm.
democratic systems.
Yeah. I think there's a tension there. There's a movement towards it at the same time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As always.
despite everything that's happening, there still is.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a zinger. What's the most important thing you've learned about being human?
The key is love. I mean, it just is.
Hmm?
I can't imagine that I'm the first person to say that if you've asked it of other people, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like the thing, we're in a universe, that doesn't give a shit about us. It doesn't care. The universe doesn't care. I don't think there's a God. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
there's a universe with feelings and thoughts about me. We're made of stardust, as Joni said. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the stardust, that the stardust has combined in a way to be self-conscious, to have consciousness, and has combined in such a way with other stardust combinations so that people love each other and care about each other and are loved. To me, that's, in a sense, the only thing that matters. It's all that matters, is loving and being loved. And I mean that not just on a personal level, but applying that to loving people and loving life, loving just, I think, yeah. So I'm afraid that I'm being very unoriginal, but when you
Mm-hmm.
ask me the question, you ask me the zinger, and I have to tell you, besides an unpleasant memory, that word reminds me of when I was trying to drink herbal tea and I hated red zinger tea. But aside from
Oh
that,
yeah, I remember that stuff. Yeah.
yeah, no, I was nasty, man. That was some
Oh.
nasty shit. But I mean, if you put a honey in it, but if you put honey in anything, put honey in
Mm-hmm.
shit. Well, yeah, whatever. Anyhow, love is the thing. Love is the drug I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Love is the answer. It is, and it's an energy too. It's a real energy. It's a physical energy within
And
you
it's
that can.
magic. It's magic.
Mm,
It's irrational, it's magical, and it's at the core of everything good.
yeah. It's really a power too. It's amazing what people can accomplish
People
for it.
accomplish out of love. Unfortunately, they can also accomplish a lot out of hate, but I think
Yeah.
ultimately more out of love than out of hate.
Yeah. Not as much.
Yeah.
Certainly can't build. They can destroy a lot.
You can destroy a fuck a lot, as we've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes more and more challenging to see the humor in it, and that's. But I think that's
But
critical.
I don't think that's true, though. I mean,
Or
yes,
is it getting
you know what?
easier?
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true and it's not true. Like, in one sense, it's
Hmm.
almost unbearable to be under the rule of people who are trying to be fascist dictators, right? But it's incredibly painful, and there are people who are suffering and losing their lives. So it's the worst thing that could be, right? What these people are
Hmm.
doing. So on the one hand, you could say, okay, it's the worst thing. But then it's in our nature to find humor in things.
Yeah.
That's, why, I mean, there's nothing funny about the Holocaust,
Hmm.
but there's a lot that's funny about Mel Brooks as the producers.
Yeah.
And
Or the great
and that,
dictator. Yeah.
or the great dictator, right, with
Hmm.
Chaplin, and that to me comes out of a love of humanity,
Hmm.
as well as a sense of absurdity of of being able to locate it and reproduce it, but also love. I think just to take those two stories, those two pieces, they both come out of an enormous love of humanity,
Hmm.
and what they are mocking is the opposite.
Yeah. I've began to see lately ways in which control is before unseen control is kind of trickling down from the top to the bottom, and I can see like failure, for instance. And
Wait,
that if you
say that
think
again. That sounds really interesting, but I want to make
so,
sure I'm understanding.
so I hadn't seen a lot of these things before. I did see, the traditional. Yes, I can see that these people that believe in this, National Socialism are doing these things. And yes, Goebbels was, really good at manipulating people through the media. But I've begun to see a lot more detail in that and how a lot of it is really just in people's primary assumptions, like their basic assumptions about existence.
Mm-hmm.
I've begun to see have come from that deliberately.
That sounds
And
right to me. That sounds
yeah, and
yeah.
so many of them, like they're endless. It's like, for instance, we were talking about failure, and it's like that the entire concept is a problem,
Mm-hmm.
really.
Well, the
And
concept of failure
yeah,
is itself a failure to encompass human
yeah,
experience.
mm-hmm,
You could say, that the concept of failure
yeah,
is a failure because it shuts doors instead of opening them.
mm-hmm,
But again, that's a pronouncement that I just made, so I'm
yeah,
sure I'll totally disagree with it in a few seconds. But I
yeah, yeah.
believed it at the
That could happen.
time. I still believe it. It's seconds later.
It could happen. Uh, yeah, but I've been seeing things where things I'd always taken for granted. And just like when you're noticing the pronouncements, I'll notice I think something, oh, wait, oh God, this came from, I don't actually want to be thinking this way. It just came from somewhere else and for a good reason. And then I can very quickly see why we would want everyone to think this way. Um, yeah, so it's, there's a lot of challenges there. This part of my mission with this show is to at least slowly begin to uncover some of those things
Mm-hmm.
for people. I think they're starting to become uncovered with the behavior of leaders that is so obvious
Mm-hmm.
that a few new people might notice that
Mm-hmm.
something is amiss. Uh, and they might
I hope so.
notice.
I hope more and more people, more and more new people who haven't been noticing start to notice.
Yeah. And it's not just the people themselves and the obvious behavior, but the mechanisms behind the mechanisms of the manipulation and how that works, how the lies work. And I was recently reading up on the fascist aesthetic, which is terrifying, but that stuff needs to come out. People need to be able
Yeah.
to see that.
Well, I'm sure
Um,
when we go and visit the Arc to Trump triumph,
oh yeah.
and gaze upon it, we will gain some insights into such things,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
into
Let us know.
what fascist narcissism wants to see as a representation of itself.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any like expectation with the audience? Is there anything in particular you're hoping that they'll go away with?
I'm just hoping that they'll pay attention, that they'll be open,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hoping that they'll let me learn from them because they're geniuses,
Mm.
you know. Um, so I'm just hoping for like an audience that's there for the process and for, especially if I'm working on a show, if I'm workshopping,
Mm.
and and an audience that will has a long attention span, and that enjoys stories that are long and recursive and self-referential. I That's what I hope for. I hope for
Mm.
just some good people who are open
Mm.
and also to
Nice.
be awake. I prefer audiences to be awake to audiences
Uh-huh.
that are asleep. or an audience members that are asleep. Generally speaking, although I was reading about one really great Iranian filmmaker who said, like, well, he likes when people fall asleep in his shows because it's like it's a service. Like, they were tired and they came into this place and they felt comfortable to sleep, so he
Mhm.
feels like he provided that service with his film. But I think it might be different when you're a live performer and you're seeing people snoring in front of you.
It might be. Although I think I would prefer someone physically sleeping than just to sleepwalking.
Yeah, I take your point. Good point.
Mm. Mm.
Touche.
If you could tell your younger self something before stepping onto the stage for the first time, what would it be, if anything?
I would tell my younger self what my friend Scott told me and what my friends told me, which was absolutely essential. Keep going, keep going, keep going. That's what I would tell myself. And I fortunately was told that by people.
Mm.
But that would be the greatest thing. I think if you keep going, you'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's my experience. It might not be where you thought you were going, but you'll get to where you should be going. And so that's what I would say to my younger self. Keep going, keep working as hard as you can. Don't give up.
I like that. Yeah, I had finally, it took me till age 50 to figure out that, wait a second, I have to keep going because there's no other option.
Yes, wait till after you turn 60, 65, and so on.
Yeah.
That becomes clearer and clearer.
Yeah, it's like, wait a second.
It's like, the other option is not a good one, and you'll have plenty of time to explore it,
Yeah.
like all of time.
Well, an eternity for that. So I was wondering, what are you curious about these days? What occupies your thoughts?
Wow. Well, my thoughts are just all crazy and all over the place. So, but I'm always been interested in politics, and then there's something I like. I know nothing about economics, and I'm sort of interested, not interested enough to study it or even to ask people questions about it or to read about it. But I'm interested. I'm interested in it as an idea, and I'm also interested in learning about the details of the Russian Revolution, because for my communist parents, the Soviet Union was this model of beautiful socialism, and then it ended up not being that.
Yeah.
But I really haven't studied it, and I feel like I need to, because I grew up thinking it was that the Soviet Union was the cat's pajamas, and it wasn't. And but also the parts that might have been originally idealistic, I also want to know about, the parts that were motivated perhaps by pure desire for people to live better. So I think, yeah, I'm really interested in that, and I'm really interested in how we can get through this time and come out on the other side better, more loving, more democratic. But I'm not quite sure I'm willing to read up on that either. So I'll just keep saying that that's this kind of stuff I want to know, and then the universe will maybe reward me somehow.
Perhaps. I don't know where you'd read up on how we're going to come through this, but
yeah, good point.
So I think you may have mentioned this at the beginning. My brain's a little muddled. But what are you working on now? What are your plans?
Right. So, well, I'm working on this piece, What Is to Be Done, Fighting Fascism and Depression, which I did for months at the Marsh in Berkeley, and I'm about to do a run at the Marsh in San Francisco. the Marsh Theaters in the Mission District. It's really great. So I'm working on that. The other thing I'm working on is a movie I'm making in collaboration with the writer Jonathan Lethem. Have you ever read his stuff? Motherless Brooklyn, Fortress of Solitude.
Oh yeah, Motherless Brooklyn.
Yeah, he's a great writer, and it turns out he was a huge fan of my late father's late cousin Cyril M. Kornbluth, who was a great science fiction writer, and wrote a story called The Marching Morons, about a guy who travels forward in time and wakes up in a time where everything's run by stupid people. And so Jonathan was first talking with me about making a movie sort of based on Cyril's life and that story. And then Idiocracy came out, which was based on parts of that idea. So we sort of gave up. But then like a couple years ago, I got in touch with Jonathan again. I said, I'm still thinking about it, you know? And then he said, yeah, me too. And so we're making that movie. We were just shooting for a week in New York and the New York tri-state area. And we're almost done filming, almost ready to go into post-production on a film that is titled Morons.
Wow. That sounds fantastic.
And in that film, I play my father's cousin, my second cousin once removed, Cyril M. Kornbluth, who in our movie has jumped forward in time and now has woken up in our present and is trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
That could be very funny.
We've been enjoying it, that's for sure.
Yeah. I can't wait.
And I'm substacking. I have a Substack called But Not Enough About Me. And and so those are the things I'm working on.
Okay, great. Yeah, I have to learn the lesson to just look on Substack for everyone.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's more and more like that. Yeah.
Well, Josh, I think, do you have any last words? Anything you want to share with the audience?
I want to share with the audience. I want to say, hey, audience. Hi, listeners. If it's been cool to be somehow incorporated into your lives, and I just want to say to you that, I was really honored you asked me to participate in your podcast, and then I found it very enjoyable to talk with you. So thanks for brightening my day.
Thank you. Hi, guys. If you could like, subscribe, follow, share, that way I can help bring you more information and better podcasts in the future. Thanks.